everyone, Joe here from ActionX. Welcome to What's in the Tube, where it's our show where we review things in the world of television. Normally we would do episode by episode reviews of currently on air show. Sometimes we'll do a season by season review on a show that has many seasons to cover. Or we're doing these special one-off definitive reviews where I watched a show recently and I want to talk about it. You know, it's just, there's so much great things on TV that even like what we're talking about today, like it doesn't get covered or talked about too much because there's just so many things going on in the world of television that is honestly on a bigger scale. Like right now it's The Last of Us taking over the world, which is an amazing show. But today we are not talking about The Last of Us. We are talking about a little known show that went under the radar last month called Three Pines, which you can find on Amazon Prime. That should rhymes. Pines Prime. So anyway, this show came out at a very weird time because it came out during the holidays and, you know, there was just so many other things to do with Christmas. And of course, obviously with movies coming back into a bigger appeal, it honestly, I've just never seen anyone talk about it. But I feel like after now having watched the show for my own accord and my own reasons, I feel like it's something I do want to talk about a little bit. It isn't like going to be one of those like big things that I feel like everyone needs to watch. It definitely feels like right now, like, hey, if you got some time during like, cause you know, yeah, Last of Us taking over the world, but like, you know, there's not that many other big shows happening right now, to be honest with you. So I feel like if you have time for like a new binge, this is, I think, right up your alley. So for me personally, to kind of give a little bit of background experience to why I watched Three Pines on my own and why I want to talk about today is that first of all, Three Pines is led by the lovely Alfred Molina, who I fell in love with in Spider-Man 2. Obviously, he returned back in Spider-Man No Way Home last year. So this is kind of his major follow-up. This was like kind of like what happens after No Way Home. Because like, yeah, you know, you have like those big moments where like everyone comes back together and like, you know, that it's the popularity again. Like, you know, remembering like Willem Dafoe or Jamie Foxx is, for me, literally, I have not seen those actors since their Spider-Man movies. So getting to see them again was great. And it also reminded me of like these actors again. And I completely forget how amazing they are. And for me, for Alfred Molina's case, he has become more of a voice actor nowadays. I remember when he came on to Gravity Falls, and then I know he was in Frozen 2, which is where actually he met his wife, his current wife. In college, I watched the movie Frida, where he was in it, and then I became a little bit obsessed with him in his brief Broadway, well, not brief, but like, you know, his Broadway stint back in 04, 05, where he was in A Fiddler on the Roof and all that sort. So I know he was a great actor. He's a classically trained actor, and I knew like after No Way Home, I'm like, yeah, I love this dude so much that I would be interested to see what is next for him, what is going to be his next big role, or at least the next big thing he's going to commit some time to. Because, you know, you always got to worry about the next thing. Because, yeah, focusing on like a Spider-Man is like, oh, that's amazing. That's, you know, great. You're definitely going to increase your popularity at the time. But what is the next thing to like, you know, what's the next thing that's going to keep you entertained and challenging? And here we present ourselves with Three Pines, where it comes out at a very interesting time where right now the murder mystery genre seems to be returning back to the roots of, you know, more mainstream media, because you have movies such as Last Year Low was Death on the Nile, and obviously we capped it all with Glass Onion, and Amazon as well just coming out a big success with the adaptation market with Invincible in 2021, and then you had Reacher, which I also did a review on. You can go check that out on youtube.com/ActionX videos, where that was an adaptation that did fairly successfully well. It's getting a season 2 at some point this year. So this was kind of like the amalgamation of like, it just came out of nowhere. It's based on a series of novels. I don't remember the author's name, but she wrote a series of books based on the Chief Inspector Amon Gunich, which I don't think I pronounced that right. I apologize. It is it is set in Canada, mostly in the I forgot what like. Here's the thing about me you should know. It's like, as much as I really like the show, a lot of the terminology, a lot of like the lore that they use with the like the real life geography of the area, it's something that I don't really know 100% too well. I'm just mainly talking about the story to story beats and that sort of thing. But I'm actually was like, a thing that was like that gravitated towards me. Like originally it was Alfred Molina that, you know, is leading the cast. He's leading this 8-episode affair. And the thing is that this is not something that I was expecting. Like, you know, when I heard like, oh, Alfred Molina is going to start in a new murder mystery show for Amazon Prime, I was curious. There wasn't enough attention on it, in my opinion, but definitely I was like curious to see what they were going to do, like what was the format they were going to be playing with, because I feel like with murder mysteries on TV, I haven't seen too much of it, to be honest with you. Mostly it's been on movies. I know there's like an amazing example in Once Only Murders in the Building, which I have yet to watch. There was also a show I also reviewed earlier last year called Under the Banner of Heaven, which I know is technically based on a real life incident, but it was a murder mystery to an extent. So my knowledge on the how it's usually presented is fairly in new days. But normally, when it comes to a murder mystery story, you usually are just tackling on the one mystery, and that's it. What this show does, and again, this is just me being a novice, I have not watched that many murder mystery shows in my current age, but it is something that I do really enjoy watching, because I always like the aspect of like learning more and figuring out who done it. It's like, the classic who done it. Like you get introduced to these cast of characters, and you wonder what the bigger play is here. What this show decided to do was a little bit different, where it took the notion of the novels by kind of having series of mysteries instead of like, focusing on just one solid mystery. And there is a solid mystery, and I will only spoil everything from or spoil what's necessary from the first mystery, because so there's 8 episodes, but there's only 4 murder mysteries. So it's like a 2-hour movie if you watch them back to back, but they feel like TV shows. So you're getting the information in like a correct pacing. Nothing feels constricted into one episode, which honestly I love about that, because like it allows us to breathe, because like, it could have fallen into like we got to squeeze everything in an hour, move on to the next mystery. But honestly, it kind of helped into the benefit of the show, because so everything in the murder mystery side of things takes place in Three Pines, a very small town, somewhere in Canada, and the primary reason for the entire events of the series really begins with the chief inspector Aman Ganesh gets involved in a missing persons case that is largely ignored by the larger mass. It isn't something that isn't really talked about that much on the news, nor is like being a primary focus in his police station. So eventually, once he starts poking around too many heads, the higher authorities, the higher powers that be, decide to punish him, quote unquote, by sending him over to a small town where normally there really isn't that much crime down there. You don't really need investigators down there. But you know what? He's poking the wrong shoe, which will mild spoilers come back into play later. They decided to send him down there to kind of keep him distracted and whatsoever. And there's a series of mysteries that go around, and mainly like it's kind of similar to. I say like it's kind. I forget what like kind of like Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, where like there's so many things around this one small town. Like some things are happening that are like unexplained. That this is a very quiet town, but these people got secrets. And this town is often described as like as we get later on in the show that I picked up, was that this is a town for like second chances, new beginnings. That you can basically disregard your previous life and just kind of live a simple life. No one's really like an enemy. Everyone's kind of like friendly with each other. And that's about it. That there really isn't much like really worry about in this town. And then all of a sudden these murders start happening one by one. And surely the dark history of this town, secrets that people try to keep buried kind of come about. And that's kind of where the story gets intensified, especially when Ganesh recruits 2 other fellow investigators to his trek, as well as trying to figure out what's going on with this missing person, which her name is Blue Two Rivers, and what happened to her, because, the family wants answers, they want justice. And honestly, it is kind of like just, sadly, kind of like a little bit of an example of how modern media is, where, we would have a very much of a unanimous focus on what's going on in the world for a second. It has its moment in the spotlight, and then it's a fleeting spotlight where like they're moving on to the next thing. It's not something that is going to focus on anything, any of relevance, unless you really keep track of it. For example, I think the first time I noticed it was back in 2012 when the whole Coney 2012 movie was happening. And I thought like that should have been a big deal. And then nothing happened. Like, there was progress, but nothing of legitimacy happened, because they had its place in the spotlight, but it isn't something that like, it's sadly the business model of like news is kind of like a business. They kind of keep up the ratings. They got to keep the attention going. So they want new, fresh stories. And then new things are happening in the world, and there's only so much time you can fill. But it is something like the fact of like once the media no longer talks about, once it no longer becomes the hot button issue, we kind of pass it aside to the next thing. And that's honestly kind of here. Like, Blue Two Rivers had probably her moment of freshness where like, yeah, she was the hot missing person. She was the person everyone was looking for. And then Other cases happen, other investigations happen, and it kind of falls under the cold case basket, and no one really talks about it unless there's a big break in the case. But that comes largely not by what they're looking for, but just something that just happens to come across their footsteps. And Gamache, noticing that this is a prevalent issue, because he has noticed like there have been many people going missing in this small native community, that yeah, this is an issue that we should be addressing. And you know what, I'm going to personally tackle it using my own personal connection, because Gamache is a very respected, well decorated investigator who has been in the force for many decades, that he's going to use what he has available to try and hunt this down. But the thing is that is not the primary concern here at the start of the show. Like, we get enough of it sprinkled into like all throughout the 4 mysteries, but definitely it is something that we get a slow build into, because again, that's how most cases are. Sometimes you'll have moments where like you get a lot of advancements, but then sometimes you got to take a pause, or just nothing comes up into substance, and you just got to be patient. And sometimes patience has a great payoff, and sometimes it has a negative result. But in the aspect of like the actual murder mysteries themselves, I don't think they were like the most well detailed. This wasn't breaking the ground, like in terms of like the way they were breaking it down, like the story by story beat. It definitely wasn't. It was something that I wasn't used to per se, so I really appreciated that they allowed these stories to breathe. But these stories were relatively nothing of like groundbreaking substance. I feel like the only reason why I really got more like in tune by it is the relationship and the dynamics between the investigators and their sidekick trooper, who okay, mild spoiler, there's a line in the 3rd mystery where it becomes apparent like Gamache is the only one respecting this trooper, and she's always on staff for like the big mysteries that are happening in Three Pines. Like the moment like an investigation's happening in Three Pine, Gamache is gonna be there. She's already there. She's already there with the coffee, with like with the initial report. She's always on their team, which again is respectful. But I do understand like his other 2 investigators are kind of like, why is she here? She's just a trooper. She should not be here whatsoever. And I remember distinctly the line where she generally is like a good woman. She's a good officer, a good trooper. It's just that they like investigators mainly work with their peers, and they don't really view anyone else as kind of like as equals per se. And I've seen that before in other shows. So when it comes to that notion, when it comes to that example, it vaguely just, so to go back to my point of like just mentioning this little example, is that so Gamache is busy doing something else with the investigation, and the trooper is paired off with another investigator, and this investigator really just wants to get rid of her. She's like trying to send her on a coffee run, but she wants her to go away from the scene. But like the trooper is like, oh, there's like a kitchen downstairs. They can make us the coffee. I don't have to go offside. And then when she was trying to like to leave, and when she was like getting kind of like forced out to leave, and she's just come out of nowhere, it's like randomly like, yeah, have you guys ordered lunch yet? I'm like, bro, you're literally on an investigation, right? The investigation just started and you're worried about lunch. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm always the one asking for like, when are we gonna eat? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm that person, but I'm like, bro, you just started your day, like, you just started working the case, like, just chill. Like, lunch is not the priority. When the moment comes, the moment comes. Like, you gotta know when like the time and place is for that. But anywho, to resume what we were talking about before, is that mysteries again are not groundbreaking. They're not like you have your like I'll just give the general themes of the 4. You have one which is like the most a very hated individual. So it's like, well, everyone in town hates this person. So who could it possibly be? Everyone has beef with her. That's not, for me, it's not breaking the grounds. Then you have another case where literally, for me, it reminds me of Knives Out. And maybe it's because I just watched Knives Out like a couple weeks ago before I watched that episode. So it kind of feels like a pale imitation. They definitely do try to give it a little bit of a difference. But the feeling of like, we're in this big, enclosed, fancy environment. And the oldest like benefactor, the oldest like, patriarch dies, and then a whole slew of mysteries, a whole mystery comes upon a pile. Like, for me, I kind of felt like it was the poor man's Knives Out. Not trying to say, again, it's bad. I'm just saying, like, it isn't something that, is, substance, which I understand. Like, this isn't like a critically acclaimed, like, oh my God, they're doing such brand new things with like the mysteries themselves. I feel like by a certain point, there's only so much you can do with murder mysteries unless you have like the time and the resources and the innovation to do so, and as well as again, with TV shows or movies, the budget to do it. I feel like Glass Onion was a good example of like they were breaking some certain things, and again, spoilers for Glass Onion, they actually had a glass onion in the movie, which I wasn't expecting whatsoever. But to get back to the show, mainly for me, like the mysteries were relatively like I struggled a bit to keep up with, and usually I'm very in tune with the mysteries. Like I'm always like I'm just a casual observer. Like for now, I'm just watching. I'm just paying attention to some clues that they might leave, and maybe I'll be oblivious to some other clues. But mainly, it is the characters' interaction with each other and just the banter they have a little bit. And again, when I first started the show, I had no idea where we were going with that. I remember when we got to the diner scene in the first episode, in the first mystery, and it was just relatively like this is kind of how the feel was like in that first episode. The civilians of the town who are like a family of sort, like they're all friends and they're all like close to each other, and then these people come into town like they're not used to. They're like, let's not talk to them. Just stay quiet. Just maybe they'll leave early. No. But then by the time we get to the final mystery, even a little bit in the third mystery, they're like more like, oh, these guys are nice. They're like really chill people. Like, we trust them a lot. Even like when one of the bistro owners was like, hey, I'll make you your favorite lunch. Just come through during lunchtime. And like, that's how close they got it. Cause like, these aren't bad people. It's just like, they're new people that roll into town, not with like the most honest and most, direct, nicest of expectations, but definitely as, similar to me as the audience member, like, I grown accustomed to them, and I really did like it. And they were playing around with other aspects, like giving Gamache more like more of a backstory approach, of his tragic upbringing and his connection to a blue jay, and all that sort, as well as slowly getting into like more back into the police force of like what his connections are by the inside, and then slowly but surely figuring out more about the Blue Two Rivers case, and overall speaking, just in general, like. I feel like the pacing was done, regardless of me not having the best of an engagement on the standalone mysteries themselves. The main mystery of the missing disappearance of Blue Two Rivers was definitely something that kept me going throughout the episodes, like just figuring out what is next and what is going to turn out that. And there definitely was some twists and turns I wasn't expecting, to be honest with you. I feel like the way it all ended was kind of like. Well, I'll say like in terms of my criticisms of the show itself, not going into like more of a criticism, which I have been giving a little bit of, but like more like not focusing on like what I didn't like about the show. I feel like the last mystery was kind of like rushed a bit to kind of get more emphasis on the Blue Two Rivers case, and I feel like that this was a case where I feel like they should have omitted the final mystery and just had it just be focusing on Blue Two Rivers. I feel like just introducing another mystery, which for me, again, it didn't feel engaging. It just kind of felt like they were just doing it to kind of create tension around like, we got this new mystery on the horizon. We got to solve this first, as well as, we made this really big discovery on the Blue Two Rivers, disappearance. Which I do understand they were trying to do, like, they were trying to keep the feel going throughout all 8 episodes. But I felt like it kind of like the fourth mystery was like really not so necessary. It feel like 1 and 2 kind of felt like natural of like a two-parter, even if it being like just 2 separate mysteries. It kind of built off the other. And then when you had the third mystery, that kind of picked off to some of the characters we got introduced in the town. And the fourth one was kind of like they were connecting a bit, but it felt like more of a far along connection that I really don't know. I really don't. I feel like it was a case like they should have maybe broke the formula a little bit, like just make the fourth mystery its own episode and then have all the resolution, all like the bigger moments and the Blue Two Rivers case to be the last episode. I feel like that would have been a much more better pacing in my opinion. But again, like overall speaking, like this being like a murder mystery show, again, this wasn't breaking the mold. This really wasn't, which I completely understand to why this show never got the traction it really needed at the time. Because again, besides the Santa Clauses, which was the only new show I was aware of coming out at the time during the holidays or in December, there really shouldn't have been much competition going around. But again, like it just came out of left field. It didn't get talked about that much. And then for me, will it get a season 2? I really don't know. The way they ended season 1 was interesting. I understand what their intentions are. But in reality, like, when it comes to Amazon Prime, I really don't know what the bar is. I've only watched Invincible, The Boys, And yeah, that's about it from the Amazon Prime standpoint, and also Reacher. So I know it's like with those shows, those were like really, really successful. So going into like this show, I'm like, it didn't really reach the bar. So is it enough to get a season two? I really don't know, to be honest with you. I'll be down to watch Alfred Molina again, you know, doing another investigation. But then again, this is not this is not the Chief Inspector Gamache show. This isn't it. It's called Three Pines for a reason. And I feel like the other notion of that, you know, just focusing on the town. Again, I know they were using the names because like in the books, that's what they're called. Three Pines. Well, not, the books aren't called Three Pines each, but it's all set in the same town as Three Pines. So I feel like there's only just so much you can do with like having a mystery in the same small town every single X amount of months of distance, in my opinion. But then again, I would personally like to have a second season just to see some resolution on certain things they kept open. But this isn't something I would imagine they would, you know, pick up as well. Which is why, again, if you read the thumbnail, I've only put this as a review because I don't know if it's a season one review. I don't know if it's a whole series review. I don't know. If we ever figure out more, I'll update the thumbnail. But until then, as towards like just a traditional show review, just the 8 episodes that were presented. For me, I very much enjoyed it. I had my fun with this. Alfred Molina, I could watch him for many hours. So I definitely cannot wait to see what he does next overall after this performance. As for the rest of the characters, as for the lore, I was intrigued by them. I was interested by them. The overall mysteries themselves, like the individual ones, were not groundbreaking. They were not breaking the mold, personally speaking, but it was the characters themselves and the dynamics and how Gamache operates as his own inspector / investigator definitely was the thing that kept me going throughout the 8 episodes. And yeah, for me, I would love to see more, but for now, with these 8 episodes, I feel like they're serviceable and respectful entries into the murder mystery genre of today. And for me, I would recommend it. If you got 8 hours to kill, this is a show for you. So for me, I would recommend Three Pines, which you can find streaming only on Amazon Prime. So go check it out there. If you already watched Three Pines, let me know down below what your opinions are. I would love to have a conversation with you about it. But if you have not, again, go check it out. Only on Amazon Prime. But for me, I believe that's going to wrap it up for me, everyone, today. So if you're unaware, this has been What's the Two from ActionX reviewing Three Pines. Again, let's have a conversation down below if you have already watched the show, or let me know if you're going to watch it. I would love to hear your thoughts and comments, as always. But again, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to us on youtube.com/ActionX videos. Ring the bell for notification where our next regular review is live. Please also like, favorite, share this review if you want to. And as well as follow us on social media if you want to stay up to date with any sort of updates we may have for anything we want to do. But until we see each other again, thank you so much for tuning in. But until the next time we see each other down the road, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and as always, peace out.